Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear us here at the Diocesan office? I think we were having problems with that a minute ago.
Yes,
We can
Okay.
hear.
we can hear.
We're hearing now. We're hearing now.
Okay, so I'm going to start this back over. I'm Leslie Graff, the Bishop's Assistant, and I'm here with Canon Will and Mr. Henry Baer, our Treasurer in the Diocese. A couple housekeeping things before we get started. I'm going to go through and mute everyone. We're not going to do any introductions this morning. We're just going to get right to it. If you have any questions, please hold those to the chat feature. Canon Will is going to go over questions that were already sent in by different people, and I'm going to keep track of the chat questions and the end question and answer session. Both Mr. Henry Baer and Canon Will answer those questions. So we make sure that everyone's questions are answered and taken care of. But the reason I'm muting everyone is so that as we have people join the call, and I expect that that will happen, I don't want to have any funny sound feedback in your ears. We want to make sure everyone comes out of this still being able to hear and hear everything happening in the meeting. So if you have any questions or anything, I will be monitoring the chat. You can message me directly on there at, I should be the Diocesan icon on there. But without further ado, Canon Will and Mr. Henry Baer.
All right. Well, we had a slight run through before we started so that none of you could hear it. So we're going to just start again. And but we thank you for that practice. Good morning. I'm Henry Baer, Diocesan Treasurer, and Canon Will Buchanan, the Controller of the Diocese, is with me today as well. I hope you've had time to download the proposed budget from the Diocesan website. I'll begin our presentation with the process used to develop the budget. In April, we request the program manager for each line item in the budget to develop and submit their budget to us. In May, the Budget Committee has a listening session with the Bishop to understand his priorities for the coming year. We then invite the program managers to present their budgets to us. Their budget's broken down similar to any business in categories like travel, software licenses, book subscriptions, professional services, supplies, salaries, benefits, etc. During this session, we'll discuss how their previous year benefited the mission of the diocese, how their current year is progressing, and obtain their goals for the next year. There are many hard questions asked, and we pull up the transactions that posted the previous year and discuss any concerns we have. Once we complete the reviews, we tally the requests and compare to the projected income. We may eliminate or modify some requests as we work towards a balanced budget. When we're doing that, sometimes we actually increase their budget because we don't believe they have taken care properly of what the cost of something actually will be, particularly in the area of travel. In June, the budget's presented to the Finance Committee for any further adjustments and their approval. In July, it's presented to the Diocesan Council for approval to present the proposed budget to Convention. Today, we present the proposed budget to the delegates of Convention and provide them the opportunity to ask questions. When we meet at Convention, there will be an opportunity for delegates to propose balanced budget amendments to our budget prior to its approval. We did receive a few questions prior to today's meeting, and I would like to address a few of those now, and others will be done as we move through the different budget items. We did receive a question regarding on the income side, specifically to oil and gas, since the market changes and no one can actually predict what's going on. If there's a dramatic swing there, or there's an economic downturn which would affect our endowment, what do we do with the budget? We watch our income throughout the year, and we will reduce expenses and not actually do things that are budgeted, particularly if it's a small adjustment. It could be that we take additional money from the endowment if we have to, but you'll recall in 2009, we actually dropped millions of dollars out of the budget before the year was over. So we do monitor that, and we will take appropriate adjustments if necessary. As I said earlier, when we're looking at program lines, some of them do include a salary for someone. Those are not broken out mainly for the privacy of those individuals related to what their salary is. But do remember, there's a lot of other items that are in those lines. It is not strictly salaries and benefits. There's a lot of other items that go into them. And they're all very closely watched by the Budget Committee because they look at every single expenditure into every category of the greater budget for the diocese. You are going to notice that we have several new program lines in the budget. This was done so we could better track certain events that previously were included into a larger budget program line on the budget. These sort of get lost, and we want to make sure that we could see them a little more clearly. Will now review selected programs and answer questions we received about other programs. Will?
Good morning. You should be able to see my screen, and that is the budget that was sent out in the email yesterday, and I think there was one that was sent out the day prior. There's a link in that email that was sent out that will direct you to our diocesan website, and on the website the budget is located there. As Henry mentioned, that I'll go over just some significant variances when compared the 2020 budget to the 2019 budget. But if I do pass over a particular line item that you want more detail on, just go ahead and post those questions in the chat feature, and then we'll address those at the end of the presentation. The first item I'll cover is on the revenue side is mutual ministry support. You do see about a $43,000 variance when compared to the 2019 budget. One thing that we did note is that the new policy that we implemented as far as the reduction in the MMS rate actually increased participation. And so our participation did increase a couple of percentage points, and as a result, resulted in an increase in the 2019 actual mutual ministry support amounts. And so given that current participation rate, we thought the participation may be a little bit higher come 2020, and so we increased it by about the $43,000 amount. Next item I'll cover is the endowment and trust income. So that is based off of what we do to calculate that endowment and trust income is we take the 5-year rolling average of our investments, and per our endowment spending policy, we can take up to 5%. Historically, we've taken about 4.5%. This year, we did increase that to 4.75%. Because there were some additional expenditures that we're going to incur in 2020 relating to the bishop coadjutor, and I'll address those additional expenditures once we get into the expense line items. If we look at summer camp registration, we did have a question come in regarding summer camp registration. The 2019 budget was probably a little aggressive as far as what we anticipated for summer camp registration. But during the budgeting process, we did meet individually with the program manager over summer camp and really develop those expectations on what the registration numbers, the registration income should be. And we did settle on $150,000, which we believe is an obtainable number for 2020. Next item will be the program registration and income. As we'll get we'll cover later in the budget, we did have several new programs that do generate some program registration income. And so as a result of those new programs, there was an increase in the program registration income budget line item. Now we'll cover the expenses. So the first one here is, so the bishop's office here is the first one I'll cover. And the increase, primarily relates to the expenditures associated with the coadjutor. And so, as you're all aware, that the coadjutor will actually be on the diocesan payroll come April 1st, 2020. And so, given that, with the salary and benefits, there was just an intrinsic increase in the bishop's office budget. One item I do want to cover here is there is a column here for funded by endowment. What we did for the budget is we allocated the amount of endowment and trust income that we draw out of our endowment, and we specifically showed what expenses that draw is actually paying for. And so with that endowment and trust income, there are some specific expenditures that we have to, once we do withdrawal, we have to actually expend it for specific purposes, and other are unrestricted purposes that we've allocated to the various programs as well. Okay. Next item I'll cover is Canon for clergy transitions and congregational life. The actual increase when compared to 2019 is primarily salary and benefit increases. We also did increase the budget for travel, given that we'll have a new canon in that position, and they may do a little bit more travel than the current canon does, so they can get more familiar with all the different congregations in the state. Communications, we do see actually a decrease of about $30,000. That position was somewhat repurposed in 2019, and as a result of that, kind of repurposing that position, the salary and benefits were reduced compared to the previous communications director. Next item, CFO's office. So this actually includes our accounting personnel up here, which is 5 employees, including myself, as well as our front office assistant. This also includes its salary and benefits, but there are several other additional expenses included in that. One of the largest ones is our third-party payroll processing fees, and so we switched from ADP to Paycom, and so that's our third-party payroll provider, and so those expenses are in there. Also, our investment management fees. So we have a third-party investment manager that helps us, gives recommendations and kind of oversees our investments. Those expenses are also included in there. And also audit fees for our 2020 audit, those are included there as well. And so kind of a breakout of that department is that there are 5 people in the accounting department. One person just really specifically focuses on processing payroll. So we do process payroll on behalf of 55 different congregations, and the average payroll that we do is we process payroll for about 280 people per payroll process, and so that's really a full-time position there, just processing payroll for the various congregations and institutions. And also in there is some accounting services and bookkeeping services for some of our congregation and institutions, such as St. Crispin's, Hispanic Missioner, Whirlwind, and a couple of the chaplaincies as well. Okay. As we move down into the budget, Christian formation, we do see a decrease of about $16,000. What we did for the 2020 budget, and we'll see later in the presentation, is previously we had several programs that were just included in the Christian formation budget line item. What we decided to do is really just allocate or split out those individual programs to their own budget line items, so we can just better track the expenses associated with those programs. So that is the biggest reason for the decline in that budget line item. If we go to summer camp, as I mentioned in the revenue piece, the 2019 budget was probably a little aggressive, and so we did adjust not only the revenue piece but the expense piece as well, given what our expectations will be in 2020. And as mentioned before, those expectations were based off of our conversation with the program manager over summer camp. Next item I'll cover is pilgrimage. Pilgrimage it's actually not a new program. It was previously referred to as mission camp. And so although it does appear to be a new program, it's just the name was actually just repurposed. Next item will be Canon of growth and development. I'm sorry. The increase is primarily salary and benefit increases. And this assumes just, as far as the benefit side, assumes just full family coverage, which was kind of a differentiation from the past, in that the previous budget just included individual coverage for the medical insurance side. So to summarize, it's the increase from single to full family medical insurance, as well as increase in salary and benefits. Congregational support, we did have a question regarding congregational support and kind of what makes up this figure. What this is just the various support that we give to our congregations here in the Diocese of Oklahoma. One thing that we do is we meet annually with each congregation to see how they're actually utilizing the funds and getting status reports on their use of the funds. And so this is a council-approved expenditure to the various congregations here in the diocese. Curacy, you do see a decrease of about $40,000. This is just sheerly based off the number of curates that we actually currently have, or we anticipate for 2020. There are approximately 2 curates, and the cost will be about $22,000 for 2020 per curate. The Whirlwind mission, we do see an increase of about $38,000. So we budget this line item just under the assumption that if we do get a priest out in Watonga, we factor that into the 2020 budget just to be conservative in the event that we were able to find a priest. As far as the increase from the 2019 budget, the 2019 budget didn't include full benefits for that priest, and so we just factored that into the 2020 budget. Development and stewardship. It does appear that there's about a $15,000 increase for this budget. However, included in the budget in the prior years were expenses for the various fundraising activities that we do here in the diocese, so whether it be Bishop's Appeal, Bishop's Cup, and Bishop's Cook-Off. And as you can see, we've actually broken out those expenses as our own line items for the 2020 budget, so we can better track the expenses associated with the fundraising activities. Diocesan Center, the increase primarily relates to expenses incurred for the Bishop Coadjutor, and so it would be vehicle insurance and a couple of other miscellaneous expenses associated with the Bishop Coadjutor, and that's the significant portion of the increase when compared to the 2019 budget. Lambeth Conference, so that is the conference that occurs every 10 years. What we've done historically is budgeted $4,000 per year, every year. That event is actually going to occur in July of 2020, and so that's why you see a significant increase in Lambeth, but that money has been budgeted for over the previous 9 years. So we're just taking the hit this year, but it was included in prior years' budgets. Prison ministry increase is salary and benefits increase, and based off the 2018 actuals, we did note that the 2019 budget probably didn't reflect the amount of travel for that particular position, so we actually did increase the travel budget line items as well for the prison ministry. The Episcopal Church, what we did was we based the 2020 budget based off of our current monthly payments that we make to the Episcopal Church. So this is essentially our assessment paid to the Episcopal Church, given that was the most relevant information. So that's the information we decided to use for the 2020 budget. And last one I'll cover is Iona, the Iona training. This is just purely based on an estimate of the number of people that we expect to be in the Iona program. And after meeting with the Canon before they left, this was based off their best estimate as far as the number of individuals that we'll have for the Iona program. Those are the only questions, or excuse me, that concludes the budget presentation from my perspective. But then we'll turn it over to the Q&A if there are any additional questions.
Okay, so for the first question, it says, is switching the payroll processor the reason the amount has gone down so dramatically?
Gone down from 2018? No. So the reason why it's gone down from 2018 to the 2020 budget, in the 2018 actuals, that includes catching up on our financial statement audits. And so we had to do the 2013 through 2017 audits. Much of that was done in 2018, and we did incur some significant audit fees associated with that. So that's the reason for the significant decrease from 2018 actuals to the 2020 budget.
I have a question. Okay. And if that doesn't answer that, just shoot me a little message. But I'm going to go on to the next one. We can follow up with that, and we'll follow up with you if you have any additional questions. The next question asked, and this involves the bishop's travel budget. The bishop travels extensively internationally for the National International Episcopal Church. Do we pay for his travel, or is that covered at a national level?
It depends. Some of the travel is covered by the Episcopal Church or the sponsoring organization. Some travel is actually paid for by the diocese.
So for instance, when he goes to the bishop's meetings and when he goes to Lambeth, things like that, that's on our dime.
Mm-hmm.
But when the presiding bishop asks him to go somewhere for him,
They cover his travel.
Yeah.
So it does matter. House of Bishops, when he goes, like Henry said, when he goes to that, we do cover that. He represents our diocese.
Mm-hmm.
So really it's diocesan travel because he's representing us as a diocese. Great answer. If you would like more additional information on that, if you'll just shoot me a message and let me know. But I'm going to go on to our last question so far, and this regards to chaplaincies.
Okay.
Why is the OSU chaplaincy so much less than the OU one?
So this is based off of their budget that the chaplains actually do.
OU also the building.
Yeah, so we do receive the budgets from both Jeff and Blake, and we met, or they met with Canon Tony and Canon Susan beforehand to come up with their budget, and so that's.
So OU has a physical
Mm-hmm.
building that they have to maintain, where at OSU they do not.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that OSU has a funds in the endowment for that purpose.
Yeah.
So there's money in the endowment income that is part of what's going to their expense.
Yeah. And I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know. I have another question. This is coming from, thanks, Ann. St. Patrick's. Will expand on what is covered by congregational support.
What is so the amount that's covered by congregational support varies. The majority of the amount that's covered is salary and benefits for mission congregations. That is the significant amount of what's covered in congregational support.
And is that for, are you in St. Patrick's, you can send me a message. Are you asking, like, is it for repairs? Is it for clergy? Is that what you're asking?
If that is a question, it's primarily for clergy as well.
Okay. If that doesn't cover your question, let me know. Last question I have so far. Okay, thank you, St. Patrick's. Why is the line item for Episcopal Relief and Development $0?
So what we did for that is so the Episcopal Relief and Development related to a grant that we had previously received. The grant funds have been expended, and so we don't anticipate any additional funding for that grant. But as far as, we do have a disaster relief office that handles any disaster efforts, and so there has been money allocated to that particular program.
Okay. This is the, okay, thank you, Ann. I have my last question so far, so keep questions coming if you have them. What is the size of the diocesan endowment? That would probably be Mr. Henry Baer, I'm guessing, or maybe Will, both.
It is about $47 million.
That sounds about right. Now, is that including the other congregations, or have you taken them out?
I've taken those out.
Yeah.
So through September, so kind of what our investment balance consists of is we have the diocesan endowment, and then we also have funds that congregations invest, where we invest for those individual congregations. So that is about 55, or excuse me, the total investment balance is about 55 million, 8 of which is funds invested on behalf of other congregations.
We also receive revenue from a trust that is holding funds for our behalf that we receive revenue from as well. So those assets don't sit on our books, they're on the books of that trust, but we are a beneficiary of those funds.
Does that answer the endowment question? Just shoot me a message if you would like more details.
I would like to elaborate on that as well. And so even the endowment may be $47 million. It's heavily restricted as well. And so not all of that is available for general purposes either.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any other questions that anyone has currently that would like to send me a message in the group chat? Okay, thank you. What forecasting technique is used to forecast budget oil and gas income?
We based that off of previous year's collections, and we also looked at the previous 3 years' collections. That's essentially what we use to estimate what we anticipate the oil and gas to be. Is more weight probably towards the previous year, but we also look at historical average of oil and gas income.
Okay. From one of our delegates, regarding item 12, Bishop's office, can we get a more detailed breakdown of expenses? He states that he is reluctant to pledge to any institution that doesn't provide the salary of its CEO.
That is not public information, and I don't foresee that being public information.
Yeah, the budget committee receives from the national church the salaries of all of the bishops in our province that we look at. For many years, our bishop was the low man on the totem pole because he was just starting. At this point, since he is the senior bishop in that group, he is on the higher side of that. So that's a normal progression. So our new bishop will end up sliding back down that scale. But for privacy reasons, we have not disclosed his actual salary, but we do make sure that it is appropriate based on his seniority in the bishops of the province.
And I do know his salary was extensively discussed in the budget committee meetings, the finance committee meetings, and council as well. And so I think it has been thoroughly reviewed by members of those respective committees as well. And
for the 2020 budget, there is no increase to his budget over 2019.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions that you would like to send me via chat? By the way, thank you everyone who's sending questions.
It's been great.
This is great. Thank you. Wonderful. Glad we answered that question. I'm going to wait a couple more minutes. If you have any questions you want to answer. Did you get all the questions that they sent in?
The only other questions relate to some additional clarification regarding the new programs. I can cover a couple of the new programs that we are going to offer as far as listing a description of what they actually will provide. So the first one I'll cover is liturgy. And this is essentially taking an excerpt of what based off our conversation with the program manager and kind of what the purpose and the nature of the program is. So the liturgy training was, it had been a combined program with the Acolyte Festival. This program is an opportunity for individuals to receive training on items such as serving at the table, Eucharistic visitor, being a greeter, lector, and just other ministries that are just vital to the church. Next item I'll cover is the spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts is a program with the intent of to better connect membership in church communities to specific ministries in those communities, which include items such as outreach, administration, teaching, etc. What the plan will be is just kind of take a survey of the various congregations to see where the interests are, and then just further develop those training opportunities based off the interest amongst the members in the congregation. If we go down to graduate send-off.
Right there, 42.
Oh, yeah. What that is a more formal way to send off the seniors at senior high camp. The plan is that those youth will be formally recognized and blessed upon the ending of senior high camp, and what we would do is invite family members and friends out to kind of see them off at the end of that camp.
I had someone ask me, if you're referring to a line in the budget, please click on the number on the left column to highlight the entire line under discussion. That would just be helpful for visual. Okay, so I covered liturgy, spiritual gifts, and graduate send-off. Next one will be created in the image. It'll be row 44. That's a new retreat program for high school youth aimed at discussing the intersection of the baptismal covenant and hard topics. The first year, that program will be focused on addressing the theological, ethical, and biological and practical elements of human sexuality. And the last new program that I'll cover is Ages and Stages, which is row 46. That program really just encompasses various programs offered throughout the diocese. What those previous programs were the marriage retreat, financial planning, parenting, death and dying, etc. So those individual offerings don't really fall into any other category, and so this is kind of just a catch-all to offer those other programs to benefit members of the diocese. I have are you done with?
Mm-hmm.
And just to let you guys know, those were questions that were submitted in to Canon Will early. We'll keep doing that next year too, where you can submit in questions for the budget. But I have one more question currently on the list. Are we not funding trips to National Acolyte Festival? It's right here on 32.
I don't believe going forward that we are.
That was one of the items removed from the budget.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any additional questions? Oh, someone asked, what is the reason for the removal of that particular?
It was based off our discussion with the program manager over the Acolyte Festival, and
there was nothing actually expended in 2018 for that program, and they did not anticipate spending anything in 2019 as well. So that is why it was removed from the 2020 budget. One thing I want to mention regarding the bishop transition, there is a piece of our endowment for the purpose of electing and the transition of a bishop. That particular endowment is only withdrawn from during a bishop transition. And so the money that you're seeing us spend out of the endowment is to cover that transition, so it doesn't affect other programs in our budget as drastically. So that is part of the reason why you see a larger increase in the endowment, is to be able to cover those expenses associated with that.
Yeah. And back to the National Acolyte Festival, the level of participation was, as Henry mentioned, that there was no 2018 actuals, and given that lack of participation is one of the primary reason why we did away with it.
Are you guys ready for another question?
Sure.
Okay. I had a question from one of our diocesan. Is contributions to the Episcopal Church a fixed amount, or can it fluctuate depending on actual revenue?
The contributions are a fixed amount. What we do is we calculate the the amount for the 2020 budgets. That'll be the actual amount we based off the 2019 collections, and so for the upcoming year, it will be a fixed amount. So there's no variability on that.
So it's similar to when you pay your mutual ministry support to the diocese. There's a percentage of our revenue from the prior year that we then pay forward to the national church. So it's a similar process.
The next question. What is normally ever funded in the area of senior ministries? Are you talking
that would be the ages and stages.
Ages and stages.
Yeah.
I know they do several programs.
So there are several programs for senior ministries in the ages and stages. I'm not sure if I fully understand the question.
I think 35 is what I think why where that question is coming from.
We actually received no request for funds on that line item.
Does that answer your question about the senior ministries? Okay, then I'm going to move on to the next line. If you guys are sending a question about a specific line that we're not looking at, will you also include that in your question? That would be very helpful to me. Thank you. Has there been any discussion to resurrect the youth leadership program?
Yes. So as we budgeted about $3,300 to establish a youth leadership board to kind of spearhead the youth leadership program, and so that's an undertaking that Kate intends on doing in 2020.
Very good. Are there any additional questions? At this time, I do not have any on my group chat from anyone. And I believe Canon Will, we've answered all the questions that were sent in.
Correct.
Via email to us. Oh, thank you. Someone just said, thank you. You've done a great job.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, if we don't have any, I'll wait just another minute. If we don't have any other questions, then we
actually are really pleased with the number of questions we're receiving today. It's quite a few more than we typically see as we travel around the state. Mm-hmm. So we do appreciate everyone sending those questions in.
And that's very great. Shows that y'all are engaged with what's going on in the diocese, and we appreciate that. I have another question. As we have a more senior demographic within the church, it is a question as to that group's ministry and the origin of the question. Thanks for the answer on the youth leadership. Oh, you're asking, as we have a more higher senior demographic within the church, it is a question as to that group's ministry. Can you elaborate on your secondary question? I'm trying to make sure I have a clarified view of that question about the senior demographics, just to make sure I represent your question correctly to the group. Are you asking? Can you read the question? You want to read it? Oh, okay. That was your basis. As there's more, your reason you asked about that senior ministry was because you're seeing a larger demographic of seniors in our church. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, if we don't have any additional questions, I did have someone say, we are always looking at our demographics and trying to adjust programs for what we believe the needs are in the diocese. So I'm not involved in the budget process, but I know that they do a lot of intense work to make sure that we are meeting the needs.
And this year, you'll notice that there's new programs that were added, and at the budget committee, as we heard different programs they wanted to add specifically for youth and families, We left every one of them in the budget. I'm not sure if we'll have sufficient interest to get them all going this year. But the future of the church sits in those younger people and their families, and it is very important on the budget committee side when we looked at this to say we really need to do work there as a diocese. We have to be able to get families with young children coming into our churches, because that's our future. And if we can't do that, we will just see a continuing decline in the number of people participating in the Episcopal Church, just like other denominations in the state and the nation. Our diocese is doing a much better job at attracting youth and growth than other dioceses in the country, but we need to be able to do more to try and encourage families to come and join the Episcopal Church, and we need to have programs for those kids to be able to participate in.
Okay, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. All right, yeah, like mentioned earlier, we really appreciate your feedback and time this morning, and I think it was a very productive meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we will have this recorded, and it will be put on the website for sure by Monday. So thank you all. I believe this morning we had 20 participants. I know some of them had multiple people at their church. So thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you.